Today we're unboxing and installing the remote CAN I/O module from Holley on our EFI. Stick around. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the garage, and finally we're getting back to getting some of the projects on the Smoke Monster knocked out, and one of them that I've had on the back burner for a long time is the remote CAN I/O module that's available. It works with the EFI, the Terminator, the Dominator. For some reason you filled up all of that I/O, and it is part number 554-165. And I'm anxious to get this thing unboxed, take a look at the instructions that are included in it, and we're going to try and go ahead and hook up that amperage meter that I bought way long ago to try and figure out what was going on with the electrical stuff on the Smoke Monster. Just never got around to installing it, and I'll be honest, I don't want to have to dig into that harness for the EFI because it's pretty well used up and where it needs to be. I don't want to have to open it up, add more wires, things like that. This makes it easy. Now, one of the questions that I have not been able to find the answer to, and if you know it, I want you to go down to the comments down below and post it, is whether or not you can chain more than one of these CAN modules. In the instructions, it talks about there is a number on the back of the module that is the CAN bus address for this module. You need to know what that is whenever you're setting this up in the software. So keep that in mind. We'll take a look at that whenever we unbox it. Let's go ahead and do that now. Hey everybody, I wanted to take a quick second from this video to talk about an offer from our friends from High Performance Academy. Right now they're doing a giveaway in which you can get your own Holley Terminator X. On top of that, you're going to get access, VIP access to their entire catalog, and that's everything that they have now and everything in the future. So make sure and check it out. We're talking about ECU tuning, engine building, wiring harnesses, chassis setup. The sky is the limit. So click the link down in the description. It's going to be the one at the very top. And listen, if you miss out on this drawing, click that link anyways, because it's going to take you to any drawing that they're doing and give you the opportunity to win something for free from our friends at High Performance Academy. And hey, while you're over there, go ahead and glance at some of the courses, browse around, see if there's anything that catches your eye, and don't forget to use our discount code that's down in the description to save a little bit of money and help the garage out. Now, let's get back to tuning. It's been a while since we've had anything worth unboxing on the channel, so I'm kind of excited to open this thing up. We're going to start with the transducer. Current transducer is a 30 to 350 amp dual range, part number 554170 over at Holley. And it's very simple. The nice thing about it is it comes with the connectors and the pins. You need the proper crimper. We'll talk about that later. And then a small little cheat sheet that tells you what pin number is what. So in this case, pin A is a 5-volt input. B is the signal output for the high range, which is the negative 350 to 350 in this case. They make one that's a lower range. And then C is our ground, D is our signal output low range, which is that negative 30 to 30. So we're going to be using the high range on this to make sure that we capture everything. We're not worried about trying to catch the starter. Obviously that thing pulls like 700-800 amps. But we do want to try and get everything that's on what we call the accessory circuit on this one. So pretty straightforward on that, but let's dive into the meat and potatoes and open up our CAN module. Okay, so right away we've got our instructions here. This works for part number 554165 and 166. Talks about software setup and wiring. On the back, we've got the connector pinouts on there, just generic listing. We have the connector as it's sent, and then on the back of that, we have some basically wiring examples of how you could hook some of this stuff up to some inputs, outputs, relays, etc. And here's the module itself, and it's a little bit smaller than I thought it would be. It's actually pretty compact. If you look at the pictures, It looks like it might be about the size of the EFI. I guess if you looked at that connector, which is kind of the standard Holley connector, you would get a better idea of the actual size of it. But it's got 8 LEDs across the top to give you statuses of your inputs and outputs. And then on the bottom, there's your ID number. As I said, that's something that we're going to need whenever we get into programming. And in case I forget it, it's 0535. I may have to go back and watch my own video to figure this out. Next up, we've got the harness bag, and everything's just kind of thrown into the main harness bag here. So here's our main harness that's already terminated, and it looks like we have our CAN bus connector. And the cool thing about this module is that you don't have to run power to it. It actually grabs power off the CAN bus wires. So if you're running the 3.5-inch dash or something like that, and it's got the CAN bus connectors, it's got 4 wires on those. Those have power on the outside with the CAN bus on the inside. This literally just goes in line over at the connector on the ECU. Not as long as I would like. I would like maybe another 6 inches to a foot because this kind of limits where we're going to put this thing in. Especially given that this is a shielded twisted pair from the looks of it, the way that they've got it sealed up, things like that. So that might limit us a little bit if we're wanting to install one of these further back in the car. You know, my thoughts was eventually maybe running one all the way to the back of the car to control some stuff back there would be cool. And then our other wire is our ground wire, and it splits off into 4 different terminals on the back of the connector that need to be grounded. And this one's plenty long. That's, you know, that's nice. If anything, maybe don't put an end on these and give us the terminals. I know these terminals are so small. These are small to the point where they're almost impossible to crimp, but it would almost be nice if they were both this length, and then we could cut this one down to length and put our ends on there. Maybe if you didn't do it that way, you could put this end on there and not terminate the end that goes into the connector. Because next we have pins. And these are the standard Holley pins that you see on every one of these connectors. You can get additional pin packs down there. Once again, you're going to want the proper crimper. And then there's a bunch of dummy plugs in there. And then they actually put a ground lug for whenever you find where you want to put your ground. They've included some heat shrink and a ground lug for that. So we have a bag labeled sensor, power, and ground. They're black and white striped along with blue. So I'm guessing they're using the blue for the grounds on this one. And in fact, I can see on this diagram that they are. And these are already pre-terminated on one end, and so they're flying leads. You just have to plug those in to the back of your connector where you need to add circuits. And you only add the circuits that you need. Same ordeal, we've got our outputs, wires, they're pre-terminated, ready to go, different colors. You can follow the diagram that they've submitted here. They don't necessarily have colors on all of these, but they've left blank spots where you can write in the colors for your outputs. So if you decide to use, you know, output, they've got a red, purple, green, orange, gray, white, yellow, and tan. And you can come in here and say output 1 is my red one, output 2 is my orange one, etc., etc. So you have the option of choosing what you want to use and writing it in, and then you have a nice diagram to go off there. Same ordeal with the input wires. What it looks like, the input wires are the same colors except they have the black stripe on them. And so it's going to be red, black, purple, black, green, black, orange, black, gray, black, white, black, yellow, black, tan, black. So that's nice. I like the way that that's set up. That makes life a little bit easier. I like the fact that they are flying leads. Let's open up an output wire because we're for sure going to want to use an output. Actually, we're going to do an input because we're installing this sensor. So we'll go ahead and open up the sensor, power and ground, and pull a power and ground wire out from those and add them to our harness real quick. And we can see just how long. The nice thing is they're zip tied, but if you kind of snake these things through, you can leave all the other coils zip tied. I learned this whenever I was building that harness out for the Nova because I built that thing from scratch. There's the end. Ugh. Okay, so we've got a sensor ground Looks to be about 10 foot. Looks to be about 10 foot. 12. That says right on there. It says right on there it's 12 foot if I were to read. Now, whenever you go to install pins on these things, there is a little lock. Let me zoom in so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so whenever you go to install pins on these, there's a lock. And if you go to the bottom of the connector, you're going to see a long white spade, whereas on the top there's two small white spades. We're going to push down on the long white spade to unlock it. You'll hear it click. Okay, now it's unlocked. Now we can seat or remove terminals. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our wiring diagram, find one of our grounds, and we should probably find one close to our input if possible to make everything as clean as possible here. Because that way we can run one length of wire, maybe in a loom over. And so we have got input 1 is number 13. 12 is a sensor ground. So if we look on the back of this connector, there are numbers. You're not going to be able to see them, but 10 is right there. 11. Oh, that's weird. It's the CAN bus wires. They've got two wires going into one. 10, 11, 12. So we've got a 12. Where'd my wire go? As a sensor ground. We can go ahead and feed this in, and just be careful whenever you're feeding it in to try and keep this thing from bending over. Luckily with these pre-terminated ones, it's really easy, and you'll feel whenever it kind of clicks into place. You can give it a little tug. It's not going to let go without using a tool to release these, and these have to be released from the back side, so just keep that in mind. They do lock in. Okay, 10 minutes later, I've freed one of my blue wires for my sensor 5-volt reference, and we're using 12 and 13. I'm going to find my first one, which it looks like 5-volt sensor power is there. 5-volt sensor power, there's one on 10, which makes it very easy because 10 is right on the other side of this wire. Double check, yep, 5-volt sensor power. Push this one in till it clicks. And it's not quite locked in yet. This one's kind of being a pain, and it's probably because there's two wires beside it. Double check. You can see on the front, I don't know if you'll be able to, whether or not the connector is showing silver that it's seated all the way. So that one's good to go. We're seated. We've got our power and ground for our sensor now. Okay, to make life easy, I've just gone ahead and chosen the red-black, which is the first input listed on our input list over here. We're using input 1, which is 13. That's going to be the one that's beside the ground. I'm going to put it on this side to keep the wires close together. Go ahead and run this one home. Okay, there we go. Now we've got our 3 wires in there. I'm going to lock this back into place, and we're done. Now, this is our I/O for sensor 1. It's ready to go. Keep in mind the fact that there's only 3 sensor power 5 volts and 3 sensor grounds. If you need more than 3, you can splice off of these and share them across multiple sensors. Most 5-volt sensors are not going to care, so you'll be perfectly fine doing that. And basically, this thing is ready to rock and roll. We just got to find a place to mount it in the car. Let's jump over and check it out. Okay, so I've got my module and I got my harness, and as I said earlier, we're going to be limited by the length of the CAN bus connector, which mine is right down here. Let me pop this thing loose. There we go. And we will plug this side in and then plug this side in. I do like how easy that integration is. Okay, so now we've got a length of about this long. And honestly, I would like to get it over to about right here and put it in this general direction, but we're probably going to have to mount it sideways to keep the connector easily to be accessed. And I don't know if I want to build a bracket or if I just want to go ahead and throw some industrial double-sided tape on this thing and just let it ride. You know, part of me says build the bracket, but part of me says, man, every time I build a bracket, 9 out of 10 times I end up coming back and not using it. Another option is maybe we could come over here and put it right about there. It would be a lot better location as far as using just double-sided tape. The indicator LEDs are pointed right up, easy to see, and I think I can get the connector on and off while it's right there. Maybe if I did it right about there. So let's try that out. Okay, a little bit of brake clean. We're going to clean this spot up nice, make sure that it adheres without an issue, and we're utilizing 3M dual lock. If you have not used this stuff, this is Velcro's older, tougher, stronger brother. This stuff does not come on, and in fact, my ECU is mounted with 3M dual lock, and the bracket would probably break if I tried to pull that thing off, to be honest with you. I have to take the bolts out and just remove the bracket, and it is quite resilient. So we're going to kind of move this fuel line, pressure line out of the way, and we'll come right about there. Make sure we got room for the hood pin. We do. And we'll give it a push. And I can actually still see the ID number the way that I mounted it, 0535. And now I can reach that connector and easily plug it in for whenever I want to add more circuits later. I say easily plug it in, it's not plugging in. It's not hitting anything. There it goes. Now it's clipped in. So we've got our ground wire that we need to tie in. I've actually got a bus of ground wires over here that I'll route this around, probably underneath everything, and go right to that bus where that fuse panel bus is. And then we have our circuit, which is way longer than we need because we're only coming over here to grab this lug right here. So let me go hit the disconnect switch on the back so we can unbolt our power lugs here, and then we will dive into terminating this and crimping it so we can hook up our amp meter. Then we'll set it up in the software. Okay, we've got our wire cut to length here, and I've got the seals on here. And the nice thing about it is this comes with 4 terminals and 4 seals, so technically you could hook up the low and high sensor and you could have more resolution on the low side. I'm not worried about that. I just want to see the max amperage that this system's drawing. So we're going to strip back just a little bit of these wires, enough to get some bite with our terminals. And then we're going to work our boots up to the edge of the insulation, because the way these terminals are designed is there is a crimp for the insulation and then a crimp for the wire. The crimp for the insulation needs to go around the boot to hold it in place. And once you kind of get that on there, you can squeeze together the long tines to hold it on that boot while you get your crimpers ready. Now we've got our terminal, we have our pin out. I'm looking, the numbers are on the bottom side of it, so We know that our blue is our 5 volts, so that's going to go into terminal A, and these are numbered 1 through 4, so we're going to go ahead and put it in terminal 1. Generally the lock is going to be to the bottom, but if it isn't, try to flip it over. Son of a... Okay, I had some issues with the blue one, but I think we got there in the end. The red one, the boot kind of didn't seat down as well, but it clicked into place. There was an audible click on that. So we're going to go ahead and seat the blue one, and it went right in. Now we can push the lock back over, and this portion's done. We'll grab a little bit of tape up the end of our harness. We'll be ready to plug this thing in, and then we can go ahead and jump over to the laptop. Okay, so I've grabbed the current tune that was in the Smoke Monster, pulled it up here, and we're going to try this out. You know, the instructions, I don't even have the instructions for that one. We're going to see if we can do it without the instructions. Supposedly, it's just in the input-output ICF. And so we are going to be adding a new input. Let's see, let's enable. We've got some open ones here. And we're going to have a 5 volt input. Oh, there it is, CAN. There's all the cans. So we're going to have a CAN 5 volt input. Now we have to go into configure. And we'll see if it has the one that we need as far as the 350 amp sensor right there, 554174. 554170. There's the 30 amp sensor and then the 350. So it has everything scaled out. That makes everything nice and easy. We can drop that down. We'll go over to our CAN settings, and our serial is 0535. That's on the back of that module, remember. And then we can change the broadcast rate. We're not actually broadcasting on a analog in. That's if we're sending data out to it, I think. But just to be safe, we'll go ahead and bump it up to 10 hertz. And when in doubt, let's just type in 10, make it easy. Open up the old Google machine. We can open up a calculator and say 10 hertz is every 10th of a second. So 1 hertz is 1 second. It's kind of seems backwards at a time. As the hertz gets bigger, the polling time gets slower. So if we go all the way up to 100 hertz, we're at 1/100th of a second. And I believe 100 is probably as fast as this unit's going to talk. I'm not 100% certain on it, but 10 hertz is faster than we need. CAN input is input 1. We've got that to go. CAN bus 1, we're only using CAN bus 1. I don't even know if the EFI has a CAN bus 2. Maybe only the Dominator has a CAN bus 2 if I'm correct. But everything should be good to go here. So we're going to go ahead and do a save global file as. And it is November remote IO CAN. So we've got this file. Let's jump over to the car. Let's load this up and see if it works. Okay, we've got the car on now. We're going to go ahead and sync up, send this to the ECU. May ask for an ignition cycle. It did, so we'll go ahead and ignition cycle it. And we can see our LED is flashing. It went green over here, so that means our input's good. We should be able to come over to our table, and let's go USB link, go to our gauges, and let's add, we'll just edit it and put underneath our fuel. See if we can find it here. It's a little bit confusing sometimes digging through all this stuff. It should be white though. It might be towards the end. Input number 1. I guess I could have named it. That would have helped. And there we go. We are pulling 25 amps right now. Car's not even running, and we're pulling a solid 25 amps. Let's go ahead and come back here to this channel, and let's add our name on here. We can do amp meter. Save it in there. And close this out, and let's see if we open it back up. There we go, amp meter, 25 amps. Now, I'm going to fire it up. You're probably not going to be able to hear anything, but let's see what it does whenever it's running. Okay, that's about all I could do with as fumey as it's getting in here, even with both doors open. Whew. She's still a little bit rich at idle. Sounds amazing. But we got up to 50 amps, and that reminds me I need to shut off my headlights and blinkers. But that's with the headlights and the hazards and the radio on, but that's also not with the electric fans running, which both of those are going to be pulling, you know, another 10 amps or so, maybe even a little bit more. So we're talking about 70, 80 amps is what this thing is drawing at idle. So it's definitely a power hog. I'll have to do some tracking and make sure that all of the wiring that we're looking at as far as where we've got our sensor and stuff hooked up is getting the all the current for our basically our harness, our main fuse box for the car, all of our EFI stuff like that. Ideally, we could go back to the terminal on the battery, tie it in there, but it's just a lot easier to run this short link right to here. And that's why I said it'd be nice maybe to have a CAN IO module in the trunk where you could hook up sensors back there, especially if you're doing stuff like nitrous and you've got your nitrous bottle back there and you want to do a remote open close valve on there. You know, Nitrous Express has a real cool valve that operates that way that you could set up through the Holley. So whenever you arm the system, it could open the bottle up, turn your bottle heater on, and we could do all of that through a CAN IO. So we might have to get our hands on another one of these and test it, because the way the addressing set is set up, it seems to indicate that it would work that way. So maybe I'll get another one on the way and we'll extend out the CAN bus and tie that in. But for now, we're done. What we are going to be doing here soon is utilizing this, tying into the new Snow Performance fuel pump control module. They've got a 3-relay potted module that came out that has nice terminals on it for hooking up and controlling a fuel pump. And I've been wanting to set up our surge tank where it's not running both pumps at the same time, but instead kicks on the second pump whenever our fuel pressure gets low on the fuel rail. And so we're going to be utilizing the CAN IO module and that Snow Performance fuel relay module to accomplish that. So keep your eyes peeled for that. We'll go over all of the programming, things like that. But for now, we're basically done for the Smoke Monster. As always, I want to thank you for stopping by the garage. Remember, if you got any questions, hit up the comments down below. Don't forget GarageRopeGarage.com, where you can get cool shirts, find our Patreon, go over to the forum, and remember, ABT, always be tuning.